Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV. You made the trip through episode 638, and we're here to talk to you about cannabis stuff. And surprise, surprise, the Oregon Legislature is now in session. So we like to say nobody's safe, but especially marijuana and marijuana supporters. It's not looking good. I wanted to bring out the first thing is from a lady that's been very active in trying to fight for our medical program. It goes by the name of Sandy Diesel. Just as it sounds, Sandy with a Y and diesel, like the fuel. And she's on Facebook. So I strongly suggest that you go check out Sandy Diesel and friend her and try and get out and get on her. Check out Right to Grow. That's her Facebook page. And what she writes is, if you have been paying attention to my rants to save the OMMP for the past year, the shitstorm I've been telling everyone about is here in Oregon. The writing is on the wall. They are destroying the OMMP. The damage the OHA, Oregon Health Authority, and our legislatures did to the medical industry this past year is nothing compared to the triple shitstorm that is coming. Industrial lobbyists, OLCC, the OHA, and our legislatures are working on multiple bills to move all growers, processors, and dispensaries into the OLCC. Their BS carrot, the bump up, is straight up trickery. Did you see what they did to Measure 91? Did you see what they did even though Measure 91 stated 3 times to remain current medical marijuana laws? Did you see what they did to SB 1598? How about the so-called micro canopy? And now this piece of garbage, the bump up. And you trust them? Who do you trust? Who do you think is behind these bills? You got to show to know. Show up and listen. Observe. You will see who really cares for the medical marijuana industry and who is just lining their pockets with the blood, sweat, and tears of patients like me. The bump up is a carrot, leading all the cute little furry bunnies into a cage, the OLCC. The OLCC wants you to pay to play, and only those that can afford their fees and regulations get to play. And for you patients that don't understand what the bump up is, patients might want to know that OLCC will limit you to 3 pounds a year. Patients will need approval from the OLCC for more meds, not your grower. Are you okay with the largest law enforcement agency to tell you how much medicine you can consume? Yeah, that's right, law enforcement agency. That's exactly what the OLCC is. Side note here, by the way, agents are carrying guns too, if you need a little more convincing. I go on to read here. For you naysayers that want to criticize my post, 3 pounds of cannabis to a patient that has to take 3 to 5 grams of fully extracted cannabis oil is actually equivalent to roughly 135 grams of oil. Do the math. Math says my cancer patient will only live for 45 days. The math says I will be back on pharmaceuticals in 3 months. In 6 months, I'll be dead. That's what the math says to me. But keep sucking up on the bottle and pumping yourselves with pills. You'll soon be our patient too when you're down to your knees praying for God to save you. Cannabis will save you. Mark my words. Be ready to stand up and fight, and wear your boots because it's deep. Now that's Monday, March 20th at 2 p.m. That's in Salem at the Capitol out front. It'll be another rally. We had one February 6th. Wasn't very well attended. It's hard to get to these rallies. It's from Eugene. It's 60 miles one way, and then it's a winter and it's raining, and more likely. But we've got to get up there and do the fighting, because those people are sitting in nice foreign rooms in there, and they're destroying the Oregon medical marijuana program. So I suggest, and also carpooling. I didn't make it to the last rally myself because I didn't have a ride. So this year, this rally, I'm trying to put the word out ahead of time. Carpool. I'm going to try to put together some kind of a carpool. People contact me, and I'll try to get people together that have rides, the ones that are looking for rides. So you can friend me also on Facebook. I go under Danford, D-A-N-F-O-R-D, Koozer, K-O-O-Z-E-R, as in boozer, Koozer the boozer. And you can friend me and get a hold of me, and try to get this carpool thing going. We have got to be in Salem on March 20th. So that's Monday, March 20th at 2 p.m. And it's just, like I said, it's really important. Guidelines, and then, oh shoot, I didn't mean that story in. There's guidelines for attending physicians too, and there's a website for that, which I can't go to right now, but that was something, story too, that I meant to bring in. I'll bring in next time, next show. And then also, I've read this before, but I want to go over it again. This is from John Sajo, and some more information about where the marijuana laws are now. John Sajo is the main author of Measure 74, which is the original Oregon medical marijuana law. John has been active in the cannabis movement for many years. Speaks very well, very eloquently, clearly, and makes some good points. So when John speaks, I like to say, when John says something, I'm not there going, yeah, what he said, because he does say it and says it well. And this is back to the first of the year, and he wrote, Happy New Year, and how to save our baby. Problem, early sales ends. Starting on New Year's Day, Oregon medical marijuana dispensaries will no longer be allowed to sell marijuana to people who are not registered patients. This sparks a series of disastrous results on patients. The medical growers who take care of them, on adult consumers, on retail sales that may go out to business, and on tax revenue for the state of Oregon. Many patients will lose their safe, affordable access to medical marijuana because the growers who supply them with free or low-cost marijuana products will be driven out of business. The growers will be folding because they will no longer be able to sell to most of the marijuana stores in Oregon. Most of the marijuana stores in Oregon are currently medical marijuana dispensaries, which can sell to all adults under the early sales program created by the legislature. When early sales ends at midnight on December 31st, most stores will switch to being regulated by the OLCC, which will allow them to sell marijuana to all adults, not just patients. But the 37,847 medical growers are not allowed to sell to OLCC stores. Only the 357 OLCC licensed producers are allowed to sell to OLCC stores. Changing the supply of legal marijuana in Oregon from 37,847 small farms to 357 big farms overnight will be a disaster. There are currently 327 medical marijuana dispensaries. Tomorrow, January 1st, these stores are supposed to be replaced by 188 OLCC retail stores. The numbers show that OLCC is way behind in licensing stores switching over from the OHA regulation. This will, of course, cut sales starting tomorrow. Thousands of consumers will be inconvenienced. Some stores will lose enough revenue in sales to go bankrupt. The state of Oregon will potentially lose millions of dollars in revenue simply because the OHA licensed dispensaries will suddenly be unable to sell to healthy people. The January 1 deadline to end the early sales program will be a disaster that must be stopped as quickly as possible. This program has been working beyond all expectations, raising nearly $50 million in tax revenue and helping compassionate growers help qualified patients. There's no good reason not to extend early sales. Legislation to do this would be extremely simple. This should be the first bill passed by the 2017 legislature. Allowing OHA registered dispensaries to compete with and compliant OLCC stores is a win-win. maintaining a 25% tax at dispensaries while having a 17% tax on OLCC stores gives incentive to shift to OLCC regulation over time if that is the legislature's goal. Continuing to exempt qualified patients from the sales tax is critical. What can people do? Share this post. Tell the Oregon Legislature's Marijuana Legalization Committee to extend early sales. Contact your state legislatures as well. Contact the governor and ask her to please work with the legislature to make the simple change to extend early sales. So that was written back in January, and it's just basically more trying to get people motivated to get out there and fight for the program. It's just, I've said many times that the Oregon Legislature has done a lousy job implementing the Oregon medical marijuana law since 1988 when it was implemented. The patients have not been the forefront at all. It's all been about greed. The state looks at the medical marijuana program as a cash cow. And frankly, they're tired of hearing about marijuana. They don't like marijuana. It's very clear in the way they act, and they've stated that they're tired of hearing about marijuana. They just want to do what they want to do and get it done, and don't want to be bothered with people that are actually in the movement, so to speak. And of course, the legislature continues to be led around by the lying law enforcement and by the fat pockets of the cannabis industry. And so where does that leave patients and small growers? Well, that's the problem. It leaves them out in the cold, and it's only getting worse. And when this legislature was coming up, I knew it was going to be bad, but it's even worse than what I had anticipated. So it's very important to contact your legislatures and keep saying that and show up for rallies. And like I said, the next rally is March 20th. It's at 2 p.m. And if you need transportation, or better yet, if you can offer transportation, get a hold of me. Get on Facebook. Post it on their Facebook page, Right to Grow, and also be sure and friend Sandy Diesel and get in what's going on there. And so, like I said, I'm going to be trying to put some people information together. If I hear people looking for a ride, I'll try to hook them up with people that have a ride and see if we can help out that way. But it's really important, like I said. And also on some announcements, I've asked this up before, and I need to keep talking about it. The Eugene Cannabis TV needs some help. We always, obviously, we're working with tech stuff, and so we need replacements. And we definitely need a hard drive after 638 shows, so it takes quite a bit of space to store that stuff, and to work on it. So we could usually use a regular full-size hard drive, 2 terabyte, 3 terabyte. Could really use one. And also, I personally could use some help with a plastic cutter. The kind that makes the signs, window signs, that kind of thing. If anybody has any experience with plastic cutters and running the software on it, I personally could use some help on that. So, anyway, stick around for the second half of the 638 episode of Eugene Cannabis TV, and I'll be right back, and I'll be talking some more cannabis issues. And so, get your pencil and paper out, because we need to definitely have you take notes, and we need to get you motivated.
Do you suffer from fear of losing your election? Are you terrified that voters will discover you've done nothing to improve their lives? Maybe it's time you talk to your spin doctor about Incarcerex. In clinical trials, Incarcerex has been shown effective at reducing election-related anxieties by making voters think you're doing something about the drug problem. It's simplistic and fast-acting. If your problems continue or get worse, you can always double or triple your dose of Incarcerex. Whether it's addiction, therapeutic use, or just casual use, there's an Incarcerex plan for every American. Best of all, taxpayers, not you, will foot the bill. So talk to your spin doctor about Incarcerex today. Common side effects include loss of civil liberties, police corruption, racial injustice, increased terrorism, spread of HIV and AIDS, and violent crime. Bloated prisons are also a common side effect. Stop taking Incarcerex if bloating lasts longer than 20 years. If you're trying to balance the budget, keep families together, or protect human rights, Incarcerex may not be right for you. Do not mix Incarcerex with the Constitution or common sense. So start taking Incarcerex and keep pretending you're doing something about the drug problem.
Welcome to the second half of episode 638, Eugene Cannabis TV. You got your host, DanK, and I'm here to continue talking about cannabis and the state of Oregon. I wanted to mention, as I did the last few shows, Portland Normal up in, well, obviously Portland, is having their legislative committee meetings now, and they're on the second Monday of each month, and that's at 5427 Southeast 72nd. So if you know friends in Portland, or you're going to be up there on second Monday, that'd be something to go to and find out what's going on. The biggest problem, I've been an activist here for 20-some years, and the problem is we don't get any communication with Portland. Portland kind of likes to act as their own entity, and they decide everything for the state because that's where the population is. And so it's... I always like to say that we're down here in Eugene, that we're in the, they treat us like mushrooms in Eugene, you know. They keep us in the dark and feed us shit. So, but anyway, that's one way to find out what's going on, is go up to their meetings when the public's invited, so and find out what's going on. Our friends down in Roseburg coming up the Hemp Fest. This is June 23rd, so this is quite a bit out in the future. But they've set their dates, and I wanted to spread the word and have people put that on the calendar. It's the third annual Oregon Hemp Fest, and this is a trademark Hemp Fest. They're trademarked. They're under the Seattle Hemp Fest. Seattle Hemp Fest, I guess, what I heard is that they supposedly have branded Hemp Fest, so now if you want to use the word Hemp Fest, you gotta go through them, is what I understand. But Emerald Empire Hemp Fest has never done that, and I don't think we're going to either. But anyway, this is the Umpqua Cannabis Association is putting this on, and that's in Southern Oregon. It'll feature 3 stages with camping options for all 3 nights. The cost of camping is included in your ticket, which is $20 per day. And the performers this far include Normal Bean Band, which is our main house band for the Emerald Empire Hemp Fest, the Resonators, $1 Check, the Herbal Crew, and 541 Syndicate. See, that's yeah. So anyway, that's coming up, and put that in your calendar because we definitely want to support those people. You can be learning about the 2017 changes to the OMMP, the recreational laws, and more. Topics, they'll have panel discussions with topics on OMMP, the OLCC changes, recreational rules, and all that. Over 100 vendors, food, glass, hydroponic suppliers, growing supplies, info, booths, art and craft, hemp vendors, medical info, and more. So anyway, that's something to check out. And again, that's it's the website. Of course, boy, the website. I don't think I wrote the website here, but just do a search on it. That is again the 3rd annual Oregon Hemp Fest, sponsored by the Umpqua Cannabis Association. So here we have talk about now that cannabis, the use of cannabis is legalized. Now we're always concerned about driving while high and DUI and all that. And this is a story that was I found at the marshallproject.org, and it was titled, "When Are You Too Stoned to Drive?" And that's the subtitle. The question is trickier than you'd think for police and the courts to answer. Late one Friday night in 2013, Massachusetts State Trooper Eric French pulled over a blue SUV with its rear lights out. When he approached the car, he saw smoke and smelled pot. The driver, Thomas Gearhart, could not count backwards from 75 to 62 and recite the alphabet from D to Q, but he couldn't stand on one leg or walk 9 steps and turn, standard measures on a field sobriety test. The trooper determined that Gearhart was impaired, and he was arrested and charged with driving under the influence of marijuana. Was Gearhart even high? And if he was he too high to drive safely? This month, his lawyer argued before the state's high court that French proved neither that night. Massachusetts is one of the 8 states, plus the District of Columbia, where recreational marijuana use is now legal. 20 more states have legalized use of medical marijuana. But science and the law have not kept pace with this rapid political change. We take for granted that not being able to walk a straight line or stand on one leg means that you're drunk, and that being drunk means it's unacceptably dangerous to drive. But there is no clear scientific consensus when it comes to smoking pot and driving. And few of the tools police officers have long relied on to determine whether a driver is too drunk to drive, like a breathalyzer, exists for marijuana. Cases like Gearhart's are on the front lines of a new effort in courtrooms, labs, and government agencies around the country to pin down how high is too high to drive, and how to reliably know when someone is as high as that. Most, but not all, studies find that using pot impairs one's ability to drive. However, overall, the impairment seems to be modest, akin to driving with a blood alcohol of between 0.01 and 0.05, which is legal in all states. The much greater risk is in combining pot with alcohol. The increased crash risk with pot alone is so small you can compare it to driving in darkness compared to driving in daylight, says the University of Oslo political scientist Rune Elvik, who conducted several major meta-analyses evaluating the risk of drug driving. Nobody would consider banning people from driving in the dark. If you tried to impose some kind of consistency standard, then there is no strong case, really, for banning it. When it comes to alcohol, science and the courts have long established a direct line between number of drinks, blood alcohol level, and crash risk. As one goes up, so do the others. But not for pot. Scientists can't say with confidence how much pot, in what concentration, used in what period of time will reliably make someone high. This is especially difficult to gauge because most of the existing studies use pot provided by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, which tends to be a lot less potent than what smokers can buy on the street or in pot shops. Blood levels of THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, the chemical component of pot that makes you high, spike quickly after smoking and they decline rapidly in the hours afterward, during the window when a smoker could feel most high. What's more, regular smokers could have THC in their blood for days or weeks after smoking when they are clearly no longer high. Still, laws in 18 states tie drug driving charges to whether drivers have THC or related compounds in their blood. Some states prohibit driving with any amount, and some specify a threshold modeled after the 0.08 limit states used for blood alcohol. But the lag time between being pulled over and being transferred to a hospital for a blood draw, on average more than 2 hours, can lead to false negatives, while the tolerance developed by regular users and the tendency of THC to stick around in their bloodstreams can lead to false positives. This is why researchers say blood THC laws make little sense. If you're stopping someone who just tried it or uses occasionally, a little bit of THC goes a long way. They're very impaired. They're very impaired, says Washington State University political scientist Nicholas Lovrich. But people are demonstrably able to drive at high levels of THC if they're a frequent user. The more sensible strategy appears to be prohibiting driving while high, and 31 states make this approach. But proving that a driver is high enough turns out to be tricky terrain too. One of the issues that Thomas Gearhart raises in his lawsuit is whether police officers with standard training are qualified to make a judgment that a driver is high. Courts in a few states, including New Jersey, Vermont, and Montana, have ruled that they are not. Unlike alcohol intoxication, the New York, Jersey High Court ruled in 2006, no general awareness exists as yet with regard to the signs and symptoms of the condition described as being high on marijuana. Research shows that failing a standard field sobriety test, a series of tests while walking a straight line, correlates closely with having a blood alcohol level above the legal limit. Plus, officers have a breathalyzer to confirm their findings, but the gap between assessment, cannabis use, and driving is really not completely closed, said Professor Thomas Marcotte of the Center for Medicinal Cannabis Research at the University of California in San Diego. Frequent pot users, even when they are not stoned, may not be able to stand on one leg. For example, when they're safe to drive or not. Marcotte and his colleagues are working on validating a new field sobriety test calibrated for pot use. Their iPad-based measure test skills like tracking an object on the screen and accurately estimating time. Police may not yet have a validated tool, but for those who want to gauge their own ability to drive after smoking, apps have begun to appear that measure things like reaction time and hand-eye coordination. Some police departments use drug recognition experts, especially trained officers dispatched to evaluate suspected drug drivers, commonly referred to as DREs. These officers use an hour-long 12-step process, including taking the subject's blood pressure and pulse, conducting several eye exams and balance tests to generate an opinion about whether the driver is intoxicated, and if so, by what. Preliminary research seems to indicate their opinions are of mixed quality, and not all judges allow DREs to testify to their findings. They're not EMTs, they're not medically trained, said Lorich, the Washington State University professor. So, and we have DRE here in Oregon too. In fact, I've been meaning to do another show on that to talk to people about the drug recognition expert here in Oregon. In the state of Oregon, if a police officer attends a 40-hour class, graduates, he is certified as a DRE expert. That's what DRE means, drug recognition expert. And these people are not experts. And so as Brian Michaels, our attorney, tells us, say say no to DRE, but yes to P. So at some point, it's like, they'll ask you if you submit to a DRE, and you say no. But if they require you to take a a urine test, you've got to do it. But you have something to fight with then. So anyway, we'll be back next show to talk about more subjects kind of like this. See you then.